Good afternoon, everyone. How's everybody doing? Good? You have energy after lunch? It's a hard slot to have to step up to the front of to the mic. It's good to be with you today to talk about the cities we deserve and to celebrate the people who build them. People just like you who get up every morning, even on Saturdays, ready to do this essential civic labor. And it does take all of us, residents throughout the GTHA, elected officials and public servants, trade unionists and workforce developers, contractors and property developers, trainers, policy advocates, and community activists. But without organizers like Rosemary and her team, how would we find each other, let alone combine our efforts to make democracy work for the benefit of all? How would we even know that change is possible? TCBN has shown up every day for over a decade to do this highly skilled labor. And I think we can agree they have done it brilliantly, with deep conviction, courage, and an unwavering commitment to communities who too often don't get what they deserve. Communities who are systematically denied a voice in the decisions that affect them. Communities who do not share equitably in the prosperity generated from public resources. And communities who simply do not have access to economic opportunities created by infrastructure development processes. That's why TCBN is the 2022 Good Fight Prize winner. We didn't have an opportunity to celebrate with friends last December, so I was delighted to accept TCBN's invitation to speak about the award today. So like the mayor this morning, I'm going to ask for a little audience participation. Put up your hand if TCBN has drawn you into the campaign for community benefits over the last 10 years. Put up your hand if you are a TCBN member or a member of a network in the GTHA. Canvass residents or attended neighborhood events? Great. Participated in community meetings, workshops, and forums. Supported or participated in job fairs, pre-apprenticeships, or trade training. Wow. Made a deputation or participated in public consultations about infrastructure development. Developed policy, ideas, and options. Awesome. Worked on a community benefit agreement. Fantastic. Two American capitalists who have seen the light, Nick Hanauer and Eric Beenhocker, gave a great definition of prosperity a few years ago. They said, prosperity in a society is the accumulation of solutions to human problems, not the accumulation of wealth by individuals. Community benefits are this kind of a solution, the kind that makes a society more prosperous. No doubt Joseph Atkinson would agree. When he was the publisher and owner of the Toronto Star, he wrote about great wealth. This is what he said: great wealth is amassed, accumulated, collected, gathered, taken. There are many words to describe the process, but earned is not one of them. The wealthiest among us do not operate alone in this world. What they enjoy has been brought to their door by the labor of a vast number of people. When Mr. Atkinson died 7 years later, he gave the paper to the working people of Ontario, the same people that brought such great wealth to his own door. He believed that merit and hard work had less to do with success than unearned privilege. Thrift and initiative were no guarantee against poverty. He argued for the necessary role of government in taking on the problems that no one can solve alone and in fixing unfair social structures and systems. He valued democracy and the role of an independent press in making it work. That's why he deployed the Star to fight for workers' rights, universal social protections, and a progressive tax system in his lifetime. And that's why he set up the Atkinson Foundation, to fuel the fight as long as it takes to win and to invest in the place he called home, Toronto. the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee peoples. 2022 marked our 80th year that we've helped fuel this fight for social and economic justice in this place. The Atkinson Board acknowledges anniversary years with a monetary gift to grassroots campaigns, coalitions, or networks that have made an unmistakable impact on public policy. The Good Fight Prize recognizes the combined and collaborative efforts that improve public policies, systems, and structures. No one person or single organization can achieve this kind of impact on their own. The choice of prize winner testifies to our belief that a just society and an equitable economy are more than high ideals. They are attainable through a principled struggle with the realities created by income, wealth, and democratic inequality. This is our definition of a good fight, and the fight for community benefits has brought this definition to life. From its inception in 2012, TCBN has fought for a process that respects the voices and interests of communities most affected by infrastructure development, especially those who have historically benefited the least and have been harmed the most by these investments. This broadly based movement for equity and local economic development is raising our collective expectations. It's no longer enough to build and provide better transit. The new standard is that developers must show exactly how communities will benefit. Today, many more people are grappling with the conventional rules of the game. They're asking how to move from a zero-sum to positive-sum approach to economic development. And that's why we gave TCBN the 2022 Good Fight Prize. I don't have a trophy or a poster check to present. Putting $80,000 into their bank account was the best thing we could think of doing, so we did it. Another sign of a good fight is that more time is spent in the arena rather than on the stage. That's where the real rewards of this work are found. In the moment when victory is uncertain, but you know you've done everything you can do, and you're not going to give up, win or lose. We're proud to be in this fight with TCBN and with all of you. Thank you for playing your part, and thank you, TCBN, for getting us and keeping us organized.
Thank you so much, Colette. Thank you for walking the journey with us, putting your money where your mouth's at, because it takes real intentional efforts and resources to make this work happen. And I gotta say that TCBN, this is not a one-man show. This is literally all of you in your places and spaces, in your community organizations, in your labor meetings, in your industry boardrooms. And, we really thank you for being an ally with us in this work. We couldn't do it without you. They say, if you want to go quick, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And we're going together because we want to go far. And TCBN, we couldn't do this without our 121 member organizations and groups, 12 of which are the largest construction unions in Toronto. I don't want to call all of their names because it will take a little bit of time, but really, really thank you very much. Want to thank TCBN staff. Honestly, we're literally 13 staff. 13 staff. None of this could have happened because they roll up their sleeves every day, and this is not a 9 to 5 for them. Not one of TCBN staff has ever come to work at 9 o'clock and left at 5 o'clock. Here they are today. I want to acknowledge Kumsa Bakker. Our Director of Community Engagement and Campaigns. There's not a infrastructure project or even a private development out there that has a potential for community benefits that he hasn't scoped out or worked with his team to put their big eyeballs on it and figure out, okay, could this be a project that we can get behind? Want to thank Jane Wilson, our Director of Capacity Building and Community Benefits Programs, who work on the ground every day with our team in the community benefits programs to help support the implementation of the community benefits negotiated agreements. Because guess what? We're not just coming to the table and banging down doors of the industry and saying, oh, you gotta make this happen, you gotta make this happen, this is what we're demanding from you. No. We are rolling up our sleeves as community and we're saying, we are in this with you. We are going to do what it takes to prepare our people to reach deep into our communities wherever they're at. So there's not a community benefits campaigns team member or programs member who hasn't been out there in the local communities, handing out flyers, going to the churches, going to the mosques, going to the community centers, going to the schools, et cetera, et cetera. That's how we need to do this work and bring people in one at a time so that nobody gets left behind. And that kind of intentional work and effort takes resources. So I want to thank our foundations for always supporting us and different levels of government too who bring in additional resources. But we know that we can count on our foundation partners to keep, to make sure that there's a baseline that we can work from. So thank you very much for this. We really, really appreciate you. There's another foundation leader that I want to bring up as we move into the next panel, Adriana Beemans. Again, day one, the relationship we have is just so different. This is not about just handing us some dollars and moving off. No, they are there with us in the meeting rooms, in the planning sessions to help support the work and stand with us. So Adriana, thank you very much for your support. And by the way, with the support of the Metcalf Foundation, we have been able to get in early on what's happening over at Downsview and to make sure that we prepare ourselves, we prepare the community to really step forward and take our place. So Adriana, please, I invite you to introduce your panel and take us into the next phase.
Great. Hi, I'm Adriana. Thanks very much for that lovely framing. What a wonderful day to be here. I'm going to ask the panel to come forward and have a seat. I think we're just going to have a seat, and then we'll probably come up. Trying to think of how we want to do this. We spend the most time here. So we know that we're the last panel, and I think one of the key things we're hoping to do is hear from our four wonderful panelists, and I'll let them introduce themselves, two on this side and two on this side. And it's really at this moment to think about the urgency of now, right? We have been doing this work, and we know that when we think about time, time isn't just in the moment of now. It's about how much work it took to get to this moment and how far we're going to go, as Rosemary said, being together. So this moment is also very important because of all that groundwork that it takes. And what we're going to do is listen to our four panelists talk about their perspective. And I think one of the things I really feel coming out of this is that we have to remember community benefits means a lot of different things on different levels, but at the end of the day, it is about people. It is about the people in this room. It is about the people in communities and centering the vision and the values of this work on how do we help communities and people in our city and in our neighborhoods prosper, support their families, have good, decent work, be hopeful for the future. This is what this work is about, working together and collaboratively. So it's about people, and we're going to hear from Stephen talking from that perspective. It is about organizations and institutions working collaboratively together, and Tasleem's going to share some of those components. It is about building neighborhoods and communities, and we're going to hear about that from Chris. And finally, it is about cities and regions, and we're going to hear about that from Councillor Bravo. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that. And to start off, if we could have the slides for Stephen to introduce himself. Stephen, do you want to share a little bit about who you are in the Toronto Youth Cabinet and really, why this is an important issue for you and for youth? Stephen.
For sure. Thank you very much. My name is Stephen Mensah. I'm the Executive Director of the Toronto Youth Cabinet. We are the City of Toronto's official youth advocacy body, established in 1998 by Toronto City Council, with the mandate of advocating on behalf of Toronto's over 623,000 youth. So if you know a young person or are a young person between the ages of 13 to 24 who lives, works, or goes to school in the City of Toronto, the Toronto Youth Cabinet most likely is the place for you. So speaking to community benefits and why it's important, when I think of community benefit agreements, I think of young people. Young people in this city have been starved of opportunities and access to opportunities in their communities, and community benefit agreements are a perfect opportunity to ensure that young people have access to meaningful and gainful employment, to ensure that young people have access to housing. When we talk about addressing the digital divide and leadership and towards a more inclusive economy and racial justice, economic justice, community benefit agreements play such an important role in supporting our youth. And I think at the core of CBAs, it must be young people. So oftentimes young people who are eager and willing to want to contribute in shaping their communities, in building their communities, but unfortunately do not have that opportunity. And when we think of CBAs and their potential, they can do just that. I look at Regent Park and some of the other parts of the city and what CBAs have been able to do, whether it be beyond just giving young people access to jobs in the construction industry to once again help build and shape their community, but after those construction projects are finished, how do we ensure that whatever we're building, be it a hospital, be it housing or whatnot, those young people, those individuals in those communities are able to access it after the fact, and that will once again secure employment. When we think of access to community supports and social services, CBAs can help secure youth hubs and recreational programming in these communities. And so I think when we look at it from a government municipal point of view and private sector, really being intentional to ensure that we support and have an intentional focus on young people, because although a lot of great work is being done, so oftentimes youth are not focused of that. And so I think if we just go a bit further to be even more intentional to incorporate youth and ensure young people's voices and perspectives are part of the conversations, then it'll go a long way to ensuring that we have a more prosperous and better future. Pause there and we'll move on.
Thanks, Stephen. I think that theme of intentionality and specificity is so critical for successful community benefit in the work. Tasleem, do you want to introduce yourself and share a bit about ILEO and as we move to the slides on that? And can you speak to how its vision and collaboration can enable community benefits in a way, that idea of the specificity, intentionality, the intentionality of collaboration and vision?
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Tasleem Thar. I don't have any slides. I just wanted to talk a tiny bit about what we're working on in the Greater Golden Mile. The Greater Golden Mile neighborhood is 5 neighborhood improvement areas, and it surrounds the massive development that's coming to the Golden Mile. What United Way is doing is really leading a collaborative effort among 32 partners, so 14 developers, a number of senior folks in government, and 10 community organizations, EDs of community organizations, all come together and 17 private sector organizations, CEOs, all come together to really take a look at this massive development and to figure out how can we ensure that the economic benefit of this development reaches the residents and surrounding neighborhoods. It's a massive effort, first because of the size of the development. It's 35,000 units, over 14 developments, 50,000 new residents, 3 times the size of Regent Park and 3 times the size of City Place, but also because it's all private sector land, so we have no public levers available to kind of compel developers to really, do anything. So what we have really focused on is how can we create a collaborative relationship so that we can, and how do we build those relationships so that the community has the access to the data that we need, the folks on the ground that we need who are doing the hiring, and so that we can actually create kind of, from beginning to end pathways that are kind of training in the community, where we're training to place rather than training and praying. And so we're really, really, focused on that middle layer of, in the absence of a commitment, how do we create the mechanisms that we need to operationalize the movement of that opportunity and the economic benefit to residents in the surrounding community? So it's the Inclusive Local Economic Opportunity Initiative, and happy to chat after.
Thanks very much. Chris, can you please introduce yourself and share a little bit about the work that's happening in Downsview? It's so exciting to be part of an opportunity to start and build a new neighborhood and community, such a rare one. So can you speak and share why community benefits is part of the vision for Downsview?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Chris Eby. I'm the Executive Vice President at Northcrest Developments. And as Adrienne mentioned, we are the lead developer for the Downsview Airport lands. I think I have a few slides. I think what we wanted to start with is, well, there's actually a picture of when we hosted TCBN up to the site, and they're standing on the runway. You can see a pretty good group there. And so the runway is sort of the central feature of these lands. It's 370 acres, which makes it one of the largest urban redevelopment opportunities in North America. You can see the lands there looking north to south with the city skyline in the foreground. And so these lands were bought by one of the big Canadian pension funds, PSP, in 2018, and it created Northcrest to lead and manage the redevelopment of the lands. And we've got an amazing group of committed and passionate city builders working with us from a diverse set of backgrounds: real estate development, infrastructure, finance, politics, government, community building. And here you can see exactly where we are. So if you're not familiar with the Downsview area, we are north of the 401, west of the Allen Road. You see the 3 subway stations and the multimodal TTC GO station up at the far north end of the site. And our lands are the lands in green that you see there. And again, that is 370 acres. The lands in that sort of light purple color are managed by Canada Lands Company, the federal real estate agency. We're working with them. It's not a joint venture or a legal partnership. It's an infrastructure cost-sharing partnership and a planning partnership. So altogether, we are talking about 520 acres of land that will be redeveloped over the next 30 or 40 years. And we've got what every large development site wants so badly, and that is active transit infrastructure right around the site. So we are building what we call a city within a city. There will be roughly 65,000 homes built here. There will be about 45,000 people working here. So a daytime population of 120,000 people on this footprint. So it's an incredibly exciting opportunity. It's one of the biggest city building opportunities in a generation, maybe in a century or more. And with that comes the responsibility to get it right. And so, as you can see, we've been very actively engaging the community long before we had a development application in. For the last 2.5 years, we've been talking to people who live in the local area, to Indigenous peoples, to African, Caribbean, and Black communities. And we've been working together to build a framework plan or a vision for what these lands can become. And you see here the 6 sort of guiding principles that we came up with working with the communities that I just mentioned. I won't go through them in great detail, but connected communities, complete communities being at the forefront, inherent sustainability and resilience, and making sure all the buildings we build, all the public spaces, all the infrastructure is not harming the climate, is as close to net zero as we can get. Connections are extremely important. If you've been up to the Downsview area now, you know how difficult it is to get around, so building new roads, new bridges, getting across the rail line, and the last one I'll highlight is embedding equity and accessibility. So community benefits, we know, are a huge part of the future of this site. They're essential to making this development and this vision a success. And so we can go to the next slide. I'll tell you a little bit about what we've done, both in the near term and then what we're planning and proposing to do in the longer term. So we don't have the site back yet. Bombardier is still manufacturing and testing aircraft there. We're getting it back next year in about April. But we are able to do something called meanwhile uses, which is to use portions of the land that aren't immediately needed by Bombardier or by us for development to do interim activations, to do community programming. And so we are prioritizing jobs and opportunities for local residents, for equity-deserving groups, and we are developing a place-based workforce development program that will last for the 30 or 40 years we are working on the site and beyond. We're looking at social procurement initiatives, again, focused on local and equity-deserving communities and businesses. We've already started. You can see the picture there. That's a mini golf, free mini golf course that we created with local artists and creators. Rosemary Powell is the only person to have gotten a hole-in-one on that course, and she did it when TCBN came up. So Rosemary, congratulations again. And then we will be examining the provision of affordable commercial spaces, co-working spaces, either free or very low rent space to nonprofits, to community organizations, and others. That'll be a big part of the near future as well. And then I'm really thrilled to be able to tell you that thanks to the efforts of former Councillor Joe Mihevc, who's here, who introduced this at Council, I think it was his last Council motion, on voluntary community benefits plans for private sector developers like ourselves. We're in discussions with the City of Toronto now to enter into a voluntary community benefits plan, and I think we will be the first private developer to actually ever do it. It's a pilot program now with the city, but we're really excited about the possibilities of working with the city, working with the groups that we've been working with for the last number of years, working with TCBN and others to make this a reality, and hopefully encouraging other private developers to take the same step. And I know that a lot are thinking of along the same lines. They just need a framework or some guiding principles to be able to do it.
Thanks so much. That's so great to hear both the vision and the steps that are going towards it. And I think one of the things is you talk about having a new neighborhood incorporate the best practices out there is to remember that's us, that's the community benefits. We're part of the best practice of what future neighborhoods and current neighborhoods can be. And I think to hear that commitment and that voluntary work really speaks to the urgency and the time that has been working on this for the decade and some to get to the point of where we are now. So thanks so much. Councillor Bravo, can you introduce yourself? But we know Councillor Bravo, such a champion for community benefits. Can you speak to why it's so critical for this moment that we're in and why we need community benefits right now?
I will, but first I want to welcome everyone. I usually sit over there facing the front, and I love sitting here facing you because civil society, this convening has so much to teach us. And this is your house. So why is community benefits so crucial right now? Well, for one, from an elected perspective, from a City of Toronto perspective, this is the most unequal city in Canada. And number two, what we're talking about is public money. And so there has to be a high bar in how we consider how to spend that. And that means that we have to rethink how we buy stuff, procurement, when we build stuff through capital projects, who gets to work? Who gets to build it? That's workforce. And it has to align with a bunch of city goals and strategies and objectives. You're not going to be surprised to learn that the City of Toronto has a newcomer strategy, a youth strategy, anti-Black racism commitments, reconciliation, poverty reduction strategy. So we have to get real material, real delivering on changes, and that means aligning and rethinking how we are doing this work. So what should be the principle that governs? It has to be fairness. Fairness, and that means local economic and community development that lifts up communities, doesn't displace, but actually listens to what we know in communities, what workers know, what organizations like this one knows all over the place. And this is a movement now that's across Canada because it makes a lot of sense. I think that's also really crucial to think about what it multiplies, what values it gives. You think about what's happening right now in the province of Ontario around land use planning and the green belt. Well, if you put equity and fairness at the center of decision making, that wouldn't be happening right now. We'd be thinking about what's good for all of us, and this is one of the things that community development does. It changes who's sitting at the table. Sometimes it adds a seat at the table, but a lot of what we've been doing is saying, we're gonna repurpose the table. We're gonna ask ourselves what it's for, and we're gonna set the terms differently. And that's what's been amazing about doing work like the Woodbine Casino Community Benefits Agreement. It redefined the terms of engagement, who benefits, who gets to participate, and really crucially, who makes the decisions. I'm going to say that a lot of movement has been made, and I see the Community Benefits Office for the City of Toronto is here. I see Councillor Asma Malik's office is here, and other offices of the city deeply committed to this. But one thing I'll say is that without that worker voice in unions and without community voice and community-based organizations, we're not going to get it right, because this is really about changing the terms of power and the terms of thinking about who's going to come out on top so that we're actually building the city that we want, where we're reducing inequality, we're removing barriers, and everybody has an opportunity, not just to participate, to work, and to benefit materially, but in the future, that we all in our neighborhoods and communities and as workers have the opportunity to shape the decisions that impact us.
So before we open up for a few questions, I have a question on my own of, it's so much work that goes into making community benefits. So many players and organizations and partners, and as we've heard from Councillor Bravo, really rooted in community, because community is part of what holds this work accountable and keeps us with a clarity of vision, a clarity of strategy, and a clarity of accountability. Can you share learning about how one works across those levels or scales, or breaking down silos? How do we make collaboration be part of making community benefits a reality? So can you share learning about working with others on making community benefits a reality? I'll start from here and then I'll go there. Tasleem?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, and of course, we would not have, an initiative at all if we weren't really focused on working together. And I think, for us, one of the priorities has been the collaboration has to come first. We kind of have to have everyone at the table, and we have to be really, really sensitive to how different people like to work. So we have been, very, very focused on, really understanding, aligning all of the different partners to common goals and outcomes. We identified 3 very clear goals for our initiative and had everyone around the table aligned to those clear goals. We actually had folks around the table sit down themselves and design workshops and design pilots. We have 5 pilots happening in the neighborhood, and design the pilots themselves, and then commit resources. And I think one of the key things is that we've engaged with our partner organizations at multiple levels, so that we have CEO commitment from every single partner around the table, but we also then have operational folks on the ground who are helping us get things done. With relationships across the vertical of organizations, it has helped us to not just kind of be visionary up here with all the folks that have the great ideas, but actually to get stuff done on the ground. So collaboration at multiple levels, I think, for ILEO has been really key.
Chris, can you speak to collaboration, especially how does one maintain collaboration on something that's like decades in the making?
Well, you've got to do it. And I think the most important thing is active listening, is trying to convene as many people as you can and trying to be as inclusive as you can. So we began, as I said, about more than 2 years ago, and we recognized that it's about the local community, and it's about understanding the needs of the local community, and there's a lot of need in Northwest Toronto, but this is also a city building project that stretches beyond the Downsview area. And so one of the first calls we made was to Chief Stacey Laforme, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and I'm happy to say that we've actually signed an agreement with that First Nation, and they're going to be our partner on this project, and they're going to be working with us through all aspects of it, from the design to... And so, but I don't see it as being time limited. I mean, I think this is something that we have to continue to do, is we continue to host conversations and convene and work with organizations like TCBN who have those connections and those relationships with the community now. And so we'll continue to do it, and we'll continue to listen. And I think you also have to be adaptable too, because the world is changing fast, the economy is changing fast, and we need to be able to make sure we don't go too far down a road and then realize that maybe that's not as effective or it's not as great a need. And so, and I think that's part of listening and understanding what's happening on the ground, and not being too set in your ways and too fixed in terms of what you want to do.
Councillor Bravo, you spoke to the scaffolding, you spoke to all the policies that support the success of community benefits, the policy scaffolding around it, and the role, how does collaboration enable the success of community benefits going forward? What's something that you've learned about that?
On the one hand, on the policy side, it's constantly challenging the notion that what value for money is, what a benefit is, right? If we can redefine benefits, they have to always be coming out of the visions, deeply in community, deeply in saying, like, this is the way that we know how the world is. We know what our lives are like. We know the solutions we want to see. I think that there are organizations who can provide, who have been providing the capacity to organize toward those ends, and then on the inside, within government, it's questioning whether we're using the right metrics constantly, and that's a big job, because a lot of what we do at the local level, at the city level, it's the province that says what we can do, what we can't do, what we must do. So they set the rules. But if we don't challenge them from within here, if we don't question and push back and say, you know what, this contract might look good to you, but actually this other approach here is actually going to lift a lot of people up, and it's actually what people want. They want to be part of the solution. I think that what's been so extraordinary about this strategy of community benefits is that it comes out of the deep work of workers and unions and working in the service sector for very low wages. It comes out of people who are living, racialized people, immigrant people, people living with low income in communities, and that relationship and that solidarity has given real life, not just in the birthplace in Los Angeles, but now across North America and really growing in Canada. So what can we learn and take from that? Well, it shouldn't be government, I think, that directs what the actual vision is. It has to continue to come out of community, the desire, the definition of what the benefits are. This is what we want to see change for us. And then from there, as has been said, the flexibility. Once you come to the table, you're part of the process. And now you're working with a whole bunch of other organizations, with government, with the private sector, to find a solution to get to yes. And I think the outcomes are just always going to be stronger and better in this way. But I think that we have a lot to look at and a lot to unpack and undo. I was talking about land use planning just briefly in the opening remarks. Like all of the rules about how we use land and buildings and the challenge of gentrification, that's at the local level in many ways. But it's also provincial rules. And we have to change that, because I don't ever want to see a situation again where many of us, how many people here supported, participated, or were fans of the Eglinton Crosstown Community Benefits Framework Project and hiring and getting a 10% target? Well, we did win something there. We did win some things, but now the very communities that wanted to benefit are being displaced because of increasing land values. So those are the things that we have to fix methodically, systematically, and that's going to happen in collaboration. And there's a role for everyone to play here, including the private sector and certainly government to lead.
Thank you. Stephen, we started this conversation knowing that this work is centered around people, and Councillor Bravo reminded us how important it is to always keep that in our focus. Before we open up to questions, I want to finish with you so you can remind us and frame it around people and why this is important. So what is something that's important for us in this room to remember as we go forward?
I think the key to remember is that, you know, young people exist and young people are here. And I know so oftentimes we talk about youth being the future, so on and so forth, but recognizing that we need to support young people in the present. And by neglecting to support young people and ensuring that young people have those access to opportunities that, you know, the young people have, you know, community supports and recreational program and so on and so forth, that it's going to benefit our society right now. You know, what kind of society will we have when we have a youth population in the future that is not able to sustain themselves or their families? You know, this going to be a society where, you know, crime will be rampant, where young people and, you know, will be, you know, engaging in nefarious and criminal behavior because they're unable to make ends meet. And so, you know, when I think of CBAs, we got to once again root it in young people and root it in to ensure that young people once again have those access to opportunities, and in a meaningful and not performative way. You know, so oftentimes when we do engage young people, it's tokenistic, it's performative, but, you know, it must be meaningful to ensure that young people have a voice at the table. And, you know, honestly, it just starts with asking them, you know, as a young person, what do you want? What do you seek? And when I look at the Toronto Youth Cabinet, although we have, you know, a citywide mandate to, you know, amplify young people's voices, but even, you know, when I'm connecting with young people in Scarborough or downtown or East End or West End, you know, each experience is different. Each community is different. The needs on one side are different. And so it's a matter of centering those voices, centering those people's experiences, and ensuring that they have, like Councilor Brad was speaking to, you know, beyond just a seat at the table, like rearranging those tables and asking ourselves who are not there, who doesn't need to be there, and who should be there. So let's once again remember that young people exist, and we must support them now for a better tomorrow. Thank you very much.
I think City Hall agreed so much, they dropped their mic. There was a mic drop moment. We have a few minutes for some questions. Kumsa's at the mic, and if anyone has something they want to ask or clarify, please, Kumsa will do that, and then we're on schedule, I think.
Two questions?
Sure. Two.
Yeah, you gotta walk to the mic here, sorry. Sorry, Mary, just come over here. We're gonna take the first question, you'll be second. Right, go ahead.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the organizers, Kumsa, Hassan, Rosemary, and thank you for the guests. I hope I'm not being too loud, but let me introduce myself. My name is Samir Bayan, and I'm a tenant of Thorncliffe Park Drive, and I'm also an organizer of the Thorncliffe Park Tenants Association. I'll give you just a little bit context of myself and who I'm representing here today. So we are Thorncliffe Park tenants. We've been on rent strike since May 1st, and this is in protest. Thank you. This is in protest of the above guideline rent increase that we've been facing, and we cannot really afford. Our building is owned by the PSP Investment, and our understanding is Northcrest Development is a subsidiary of PSP Investment. For a year and a half now, we have sent emails and tried to communicate with PSP members, delivered letters, and spoke to many in person, but each and every time we've been ignored. Instead of withdrawing the rent hike, the action that we faced, that there would be an eviction notice from the LTP against us. Hundreds of people from Thorncliffe Park now are facing eviction notices, and there have hearings. This is mainly for all the members, but specifically for Chris. Today, we are asking you that we can kindly speak to the PSP CEO, Depra Ordea, and tell her that the PSP must withdraw the above guideline increase that harm our community. We have been speaking of community engagement and community support, but this is mainly contradicts that ethical practice. And for the other organizations, I'm just asking you that you need to be aware that this is happening at other communities, and we need your support. We need your support more than any time else. If you work with partners like PSP or any of its subsidiaries, that definitely helps in the displacement of Thorncliffe tenants. So I'm asking you, please kindly reassess your situation, reassess your efforts, and don't be part into it. Thank you so much.
No, I'll answer the question, and I'm happy to carry that message back to PSP. And I'm sorry for what's happening. I think we all know how difficult it is in the city, the cost of rent, cost of housing. All I can say is that we were created to deal with one issue and one issue only, and that is the redevelopment of the Downsview Airport land. So we have no association at all with the issue you're talking about. PSP owns and makes investments in hundreds, if not thousands, of different initiatives and businesses. That said, I will happily carry that message back. We're certainly aware of the issue. But, you know, I can only really speak to what we can control, and that is we want to be part of the solution on affordable housing. The city has set a minimum requirement of 10% of all the rental stock that we build on the site will be affordable. We've already pledged to go beyond that and do 15%. To make the units affordable for longer, for 99 years, as opposed to the city minimum, which is 25 years. And we know that's not enough. And so we're going to continue to work to exceed those minimums and to work with other levels of government, the city, the province, the federal government, using existing programs to do more on affordable housing. And that's all we can do, because as I say, Downsview is our project. It's the only thing we're working on. It's the only thing we're doing. And that's where we feel we can have the most impact. I'm happy to deliver your message, yes.
Yes.
Sorry, hi. In 2021, the federal bill for community benefits died in the Senate. Are there any efforts to try to resurrect that, to make another attempt for community benefits bill?
Councillor, any insights on that, Councillor Bravo? Any insights from the audience on that question in regards to Bill Kumsa? No? I think that's an area that's important for us to learn more about then.
I'll say, though, that the effort to put that bill through the Senate, I think, was done in solidarity, but most of the solutions of what we need to push for are really around this provincial government, the federal government, and all municipalities to make very specific statements and very specific commitments to targeted and measurable delivery of benefits into the process of capital investments and procurement. And that's going to take all levels of government. And while the Senate bill may not have carried forward, it was a strategy, and we'll have to collectively carry forward that effort now.
Time for Kumsa? Do we have time for one more question, or we have to wrap up? But one more. We'll get on the bus quickly, right?
Hi, thank you all for being here. I'm very interested in the community projects that you guys have discussed here, but what I have not heard anything addressed is people with disabilities and accessibility for individuals who want to live in these spaces and who want to actually be able to access the resources that will be available in these spaces. And secondly, we have a lot of talk about affordable housing, but that is assuming that people have an income, therefore they can afford. For those people who are not receiving income and are unhoused, I want to know what is going to be happening, particularly in the Downsview area there, for that is seeing now a 40% increase in unhoused individuals who do not have income and will not be. How are we going to accommodate those?
Go ahead, Chris.
Sure. So we're looking at a number of different ways that, again, we can be part of the solution, and RGI, or rent geared to income, we think is part of the answer there for sure. And so we're in discussions with the city about having a percentage of the affordable units that we will be building and turning over to nonprofits and community partners be RGI units. So, I think that is, again, part of the answer. It's not the whole answer, but again, we're only able to do what we're able to do. We want to do as much as we can, and we'll continue to respond and to listen and to work with others to make to do what we can to address this issue.
Are there plans for shelter to be available, necessary shelter for unhoused individuals to be in this area?
So, as I said, we're building a small city. And so any part of a city, that is a reality, that there are unhoused people. And so we'll work with the city and others to provide facilities for people who are unhoused and others. At the current moment, it doesn't make sense to have shelters on an industrial site because there aren't the wraparound services, there aren't the things that people need with job training programs, with addiction and mental health services and other things. To just have them in an industrial area is probably not the wisest thing, and that's not me saying that, that's what we hear from the experts. So it'll be a medium and long-term solution, not a short-term solution. I'm just being totally honest with you.
So I want to thank, I know that we could keep on having this conversation, and it's definitely hard to stay on schedule with all the framing, but I want to thank you for, one, even in the questions, the framing, reminding us that community benefits is a holistic approach. It's about jobs, it's about neighborhoods, it's about enterprise, it's about economy, it's about social services, it's definitely about our social safety net and income. And it's important that we don't let community benefits silo those and make it fragmented. Because what we're talking about, how do we create complete communities, but also how do we create opportunities for people to be holistic in their opportunities, not just necessarily through work, but through school, through education, through community. And I think this is where it's so important as we go into the next phase and we think about the Ontario line, how do we make sure it's something that's going to still be years in the making and years in the future, that we seize this moment of now and we make sure that this is a holistic, comprehensive strategy to support communities across the city and workers and immigrant communities across the city. I'm going to hand it over to Rosemary. I want to thank the panelists, and I want to thank all of you, and I'll hand it over to Rosemary.
Thank you, Adriana, and thank you, panelists, for a really in-depth, inspiring conversation about community benefits and how we are going to need to work together to really achieve this vision that we have for how we how we build infrastructure. Chris, Rick? If you, okay, we'll take a second for this.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Rick. I appreciate that. I just wanted to say to Mr. David Evie, out of loving respect for the Indigenous community, the Mississaugas of the First Credit do not represent Toronto's Indigenous community. I just want to say that we're 80,000 deep, and I was wondering if in the future we could have, if there was a possibility that we could have another panel that accurately represents the 80,000 of us that do pay taxes and live here. I've lived in Toronto's urban Indigenous community my whole life, done a great deal of work within, and none of us know any of the Mississaugas of the First Credits. They don't live here. There might be a handful. And yeah, I just wanted to say that in the future, I'm hoping that we can have some other voices in there that are representative of people that actually live here.
Thank you. And that's the goal of community benefits, is to bring everyone to the table, those who've been traditionally excluded from the conversations. And this is not the only conversation that we're going to have. We're going to continue this work because we're in it for the long term. We would like to wrap up now, but I want to call some very important people to stand with me. the Peel Community Benefits Network, as well as the Hamilton Community Benefits Network, Carl Andrus and Junie LaBelle. Thank you. And so as you can see, the community benefits movement is growing. It's no longer just the Toronto Community Benefits Network. There are community benefits coalitions in the region and across Ontario, and there are more community benefits coalitions across Canada. In fact, community benefits is not new. It builds on well-established Indigenous practices because of the duty to consult, over 300 signed impact benefits agreements with the Indigenous communities of Canada. So this is a practice that is tried and proven, and we build on the shoulders of others. When I talk about building on the shoulders of others, I also want to recognize that I came here with a foundation that had already been laid. Me, Rosemary Powell. I came here to TCBN on a foundation that had already been laid with 13 community organizations and labor organizations who had come together to start the community benefits because they recognized that they needed to organize in order to be able to negotiate directly with Metrolinx. And I know Steve Shalhorn is always there as a support, never puts himself forward. There he is, thank you very much. Rick Ciccarelli, want to recognize too some of there are board members here from the TCBN, Ana Teresa Portillo, Sarah Ali, past board member. There are probably others in the room too, please. Oh, that's Anna right there. Thanks for your continued support. Keeping and building. I don't think Effie is here today. Anyways, but the idea is that Rick Ciccarelli, I see you too. One of the first staff members of the Toronto Community Benefits Network with the Labor Education Center supporting the work here. There is one person that I wanted to just acknowledge, and if we can just give a minute of silence just to recognize Prince Sabanda, who was also with Rick Ciccarelli and Steve Shalhorn from day one at the Toronto Community Benefits Network, helping to build the foundation for community benefits. He passed away in August, but I can tell you, sweat, blood, and tears, he invested in helping to lay the foundation for community benefits as well. So if we can just take a minute and I'll hand it over to my colleagues here. Just a minute. Thank you. Judy?
Thank you, Rosemary. I have the pleasure of coming here today from Peel Region, representing the Peel Community Benefits Network, of which I'm a member. The network was started in 2019. It was a community benefit agreement put together between the region of Peel and United Way of Greater Toronto with partners in the Peel community. And it is co-chaired by the Region of Peel and the United Way of Greater Toronto. We all know what happened in 2020, and that got in the way of progress. So, for a couple of years, nothing much happened. However, some enabling priorities had been put in place. The Region of Peel had a sustainable procurement guideline and toolkit, and City of Mississauga had a sustainable procurement policy, and both were being activated. In 2022, when things got started up again, as with other areas, the moving was slow. And so with the Peel Community Benefits Network, I'm not sure if, no, okay. So we're still in our infancy. So if you think about TCBN and they're in post-grad school and Hamilton's in university, maybe just finishing high school, we're in kindergarten. We're still working on the collaboration, advocacy, empowerment end of things, and are setting goals and achieving some really sound relationships with trade unions and contractors, municipalities, and community partners, and also equity-deserving communities in Peel. But there's a long way for us to go, and it's going to be a long journey, but we're going to stick with it. And at that, I'm standing between you and your bus ride, so I'm going to just hold the rest of my comments, but thank you.
I'll also maybe not be quite as brief, but still as quick as possible. So the Hamilton Community Benefits Network was founded along the same lines as the TCBN in 2017. We came together as a community labor coalition with active support from the building trades, local both public and private sector unions, a pile of not-for-profits and NGOs in the city of Hamilton. We're now up to 64 members and partners in the Hamilton Community Benefits Network, and we came together to seize the opportunity of the Hamilton Light Rail project. We were really hoping to kind of follow in the same steps of Toronto around the Eglinton Crosstown in their hard work in kind of carving a path. And since then, we've been pushing community benefits because, as you've heard today and discovered today, community benefits is a big tent that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So in Hamilton, we were really trying to push community benefits beyond just the workforce development piece that the TCBN laid the foundation for us on. And so we managed to actually get in the memorandum of understanding between the City of Hamilton and the province, affordable housing and community benefits recognized as priorities. Since then, the federal government has invested heavily in a transit affordable housing lab, which is being launched. So Hamilton will be the prototype city for transit or equitable transit-oriented development being done with an eye to affordable housing. So we're starting with a $17 million fund from the federal government and other investors. Which will grow in phase 2 to $500 million to be pioneered between the municipality and the federal government to build affordable housing on transit corridors. And should the lab be successful, it's supposed to possibly prototype a national product once it's been done in Hamilton. So we've been pushing on that. The Hamilton Community Benefits Network has also done a lot of work in tenant advocacy, tenant rights. What we were really focused on is it's great that these transit lines are being built, but with those transit lines come displacement, becomes gentrification, and becomes massive impacts on neighborhoods. And for those of you who know Hamilton, most of our code red neighborhoods are on the LRT corridor. Those are neighborhoods of deep systemic poverty. We are the third poorest riding in Hamilton Center, where the transit corridor is going to go through in the country. So it was really important for the Community Benefits Network to center tenants' rights, to center those that were going to be displaced and going to be marginalized by this project. So it wasn't enough for us to just build those workforce development opportunities for marginalized groups and women, but also to carve out a space to make sure that these corridors included affordable housing and really acknowledge the damage that these infrastructure projects can lay, as well as the benefits that come with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there something else you wanted to mention, Judy?
I kind of made it sound like we hadn't done very much. So we do have a partnership with Mobilinks for the Hazel McCallion LRT in Mississauga up Highway 10 or here, Ontario. And thank you. And we've also, with that partnership, achieved many positive outcomes for youth, for equity-deserving communities. There was recently a bus tour that went through the area and some key stakeholders talking about the difference that it had made in their lives. So there is some good work happening there. I didn't mean to undermine it, just didn't want to say too much.
Thank you. And so John Cartwright, Alejandro Bravo, Steve Shalhorn, Paul Chamberlain, Colette Murphy, Pedro Barata, Adriana Beemans. Are you proud? I could call out more. As you can see, Sarah, the community benefits movement is growing. And, you know, we're so proud, and we stand with you in your local communities for, you know, leading in the space. And you know what? Community benefits is growing across Canada, and we thank the United Way too, because we are going to be working together with our colleagues across the aisle, you know, in different provinces across Canada to develop some standards and best practices, because everybody wants community benefits, right? It means everything to everybody. But there must be certain ground values that we can all stand on. And so with support from the United Way, we're in the process of building our standards and best practices for community benefits. And we hope to collaborate with all of you in terms of contributing in what your recommendations are for how that could develop. So with that, I want to thank you for coming out. The day isn't done. So let's do a quick round of applause for everyone and for our great panelists here, Taslim, Chris, Steve, and Alejandra, and all of us. But the tour, and we're going to be militant in getting people onto those buses because we need to see the Ontario line, feel it, touch it, experience it for yourself, and see what's at stake. So Kumsa, are you going to give us the process for how we're going to get on those buses?
Okay, awesome. The exciting part of the day is getting out into the communities and hearing from an amazing roster of community representatives, local elected officials of why our advocacy is important to ensure that when they build the Ontario line that there is a community benefits agreement. And so we have 3 stops. One is going to be in the Moss Park neighborhood in Moss Park, where there's a new Moss Park station that's going to be built. The second station, the stop is going to be at the Corktown station, which is actually what's called a transit-oriented community. And so we're going to hear a lot more about what is a transit-oriented community, and building housing around transit is important, but how do you do it in an inclusive way that also ensures that we're building inclusive and affordable neighborhoods? And so that's going to be the second piece of the tour. And then the third one will be in Thorncliffe Park, which just recently was also announced as a transit-oriented community. And so we're seeing a lot of development of transit, but also a lot of density in housing being built. And so that's why it's really important that we want to hear why it's important that communities are centered when these type of developments are happening. I got confirmation that the first bus is here. We're actually going to be boarding the buses, so if you're interested in joining us on the tour, we have spots for 120 people, so 2 buses. The first bus, or both buses, will be meeting us at Armory Street. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Armory Street, it's just behind City Hall, just to the northwest. We're going to have volunteers also helping to guide you towards the buses. And so we want to get on the buses as soon as possible so we can start the tour. For those of you who are going to be heading out, I just want to say thank you so much for being part of this really amazing day with us. And as Rosemary said, the conversation continues. This is a journey. And so we look forward to finding opportunities, whether it's online or in person, to have you be part of this journey with us as we learn and build on this really amazing work. So thank you again for being here.